Hey, thanks for listening to the UDRcast. If you appreciate this kind of in-depth conversation and insight into recovery, make sure to sign up as a member. Most of our members pitch in $5 or $10 a month, the price of a few coffees. To make this happen, you can sign up at the website at Billwardlife.
The UDRcast is not affiliated and does not represent any 12-step fellowship. I, Bill Ward, the host of the UDRcast, will be sharing my experience and my journey of recovery. That does include, but is not limited to, the literature contained in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps. Our guests will be sharing their own path to recovery and what has worked for them. The UDRcast encourages and supports all paths to recovery. Welcome, everybody, to the UDRcast. UDR stands for Uncover, Discover, and Recover. My name is Bill Ward, and I'm coming to you from the recovery capital of Canada, Calgary, Alberta. Here we are going to discuss everything recovery, different perspectives, different experiences, both with the people I know and with others from around the world. If you resonate with anything you've heard on this episode today, we ask that you share it with anyone who you think may benefit from it. If you have any questions or comments, please find us at billward.life and send us a message in the info section. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you are interested in more recovery content, you can find the buttons for the YouTube channel and other social media outlets on the homepage, and you will be redirected to those platforms. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time.
And so like this is really good, and I'm learning a lot, and just from hearing you guys is having different approaches and all that. Maybe I mean, we could talk about sponsorship forever, right? But I feel like I've always learned the best lessons from my mistakes, right? So like maybe that'll be my next question, is like, what are some of the mistakes that you guys have flat out like, fuck, that was a fuck up, you know what I mean? Just to get after something that I should watch for, or something that I can take from here and be like, that was a full blast mistake, right?
Bill, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. In regards to sponsorship, some of the mistakes that I remember making, and my apologies if I can't remember a lot. I'm sure I've made a lot, but in the beginning, I used to take the calls from guys who were struggling, and many times these guys were drunk. And I would spend an hour or two on the phone with these guys. Maybe they're suicidal, or they're in really bad shape, or they really need to talk, or whatever. And I would give everything I had into these conversations. And then only to see the guy at the meeting a couple days later or a week later. And I would bring up like our conversation we had. And the guy had no recollection at all of even talking to me at all. So here I am doing this multiple times and fucking finding out these guys don't even remember. They were in a blackout talking to me. And, over time, the old saying of, we carry the message, not the alcoholic.
Yeah.
That kind of clicked. It locked itself down, like Jesse had said. So I don't carry the alcoholic. I don't entertain what I say when they call. I might spend, 30 seconds, maybe a minute, kind of placating them and listening a little bit. But at the end of the day, I always say I can't help you if you're drunk or high. Call me when you're sober. Call me when you're sober. Call me when you're sober. And that gets drilled into their head. They quit calling me drunk because I'm not talking to them, so they quit. And then at some point, they'll call me when they're sober. And then right out of the Working with Others chapter, it tells me exactly how to deal with them, right? Mind you, when you deny these guys who are drunk and high or whatever the phone call, and you do it time after time, be prepared for a rude text or a rude voicemail at some point where they're calling you shit and fucking calling you names and thinking, you think you're the best and you think this, and fuck, you're nothing. You're just a piece of shit. And, these things happen. So, I actually just got one about, I don't get them as much as Jesse has, but I got one here about a month ago. It was about a 4-minute fucking tirade against me. And, it's a guy that I know and I've known for years. I actually sponsored him But at the end of the day, it doesn't even fucking bother me, bro, because I understand what it says in the book. Remember, the alcoholic is a very sick person. And I do know that. So it doesn't really bother me. What are some of the other mistakes I've made? I've only let one alcoholic stay with me. It didn't turn out bad, but that's something I don't do. I have never lent an alcoholic money other than maybe $20 here and there, and it was money I never expected to get back. Working with a couple is a mistake I haven't made either, because there's men and women alcoholics, and both have asked me to sponsor them. What I've learned is I only sponsor one, and I give that one person everything I got. I can be a pillar to two people, but while I'm being a pillar to each one, I always focus on what's best for them, regardless of what I know about their partner. So I always give the advice of what's best for them. I've been really good at not getting involved in any drama. So, by the grace of God on that. What are some other things that I possibly could have made a mistake in through the sponsorship? I haven't had sex, or I haven't fucked any of my sponsees that were female. So I haven't fucked up there, which, dude, the opportunity has been there numerous times. And I think part of that humility has really allowed me to be really effective. And it's really helped my relationships with women overall and understanding men also. So, there's definitely mistakes, but honestly, maybe Jesse, as he answers this question, can spark me. But I think because I have always taken the attitude that if you're really trying to do this to the highest level you can, you don't really make mistakes. You make decisions that you learn and you grow from, that I haven't had anything stick and I remember as a mistake. So, any?
Okay, let me take it. I smoke this.
Yeah.
This is a cigar.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna share on some, and then I know it'll probably spark Bill, and then he'll kind of follow up on it. Okay. I'd say probably the biggest one that I did, that I see just about every sponsee of mine doing, is getting too emotionally involved early on. And really what I mean by that is that as soon as I get this guy, like, I'm tied to him. If he relapses, it's on me. If he succeeds, it's on fucking me, right? Whatever he's going through, whether he lost his job, burned it down to the ground, parents, whatever, I get fucking involved in that right away. And what I mean by involved, because there's two pieces to it. So it's getting emotionally involved and burning my energy, right? Because what me and Bill have done is we've been able to work with a man one-on-one and then take whatever that session is and however we take this individual through the 12 steps to scale. So that means that not just sponsoring, 3 or 2 or 3 guys at a time, we're talking fucking 10 plus, right? And so in doing so, especially early sponsorship, these guys are going to fuck around, man. Like, majority of the guys you work with, probably the first 6 months, not going to make it to 4. It's pretty typical, And if that is to happen, right now you got a couple of guys, double that, triple that, in a week, couple weeks time, if you're getting emotionally involved, you are fucking drained. You get burnt out real quick. Does this even fucking work? That type of shit. Next thing you know, you get a couple guys die on you in that time. You know what I mean? And now you're fucking taking on the world, man. Something that is meant to be something that can give you much benefit, something that can give you much sanity to displace in all other areas of your life, is now like the biggest fucking problem in your life, can turn on you just like that. All of a sudden you like a guy. You don't know why. Maybe you like the way he looks. Maybe you like the way he talks. Maybe, both you guys are from fucking northern BC, whatever the case may be. Next thing you know, he's fucking gone. He's out. You know what I mean? And it's like getting too emotionally involved right out of the gate. That was now, Bill said that he believes that there's no mistakes. And I believe much the same. When I was doing this, I was just ignorant as in I didn't know what I was doing. And then once I knew what I was doing, again, that locked down. And so what I did to hedge against that was I'm not getting involved until this guy does a fucking 5. Once he does a 5 and through that process, I got to give him something. I got to give him some sort of emotions, whatever that's going to be. And I got to make sure that in that process and moving forward after that process, honesty without compassion is just brutality. Because up to that, it's brutal. I'm giving him just straight honesty, very little fucking compassion. Because if you're serious, you're going to shut the fuck up and take it, right? Then we'll get you to the 5. Then we'll give you some compassion. Then I open up just that much, right? Then we get you to 12. Then I start to really open up. And then, you know, maybe a relationship develops or whatever, but I'm going to be able to be, at the very least, at least more emotionally involved. Instead of giving all the emotions and everything I got out of the fucking gate and then get hit, you know, one after another, after another, after another. If, you know, like I'm not responsible if the guy drinks, right? Does that mean I'm responsible if the guy is sober? You know what I mean? So, you know, did I help? Sure. For sure I helped. You know what I mean? Now, if he was in a different place, could another guy got him sober? Definitely. Right? It just so happens that those things line up. Really the only thing that the only thing that I could really point to myself, probably the biggest thing, is being able to prospect this guy properly. Right out of the gate, you know, guy calls me and says, Jess, want to know if you could sponsor me. That's about an hour conversation on the phone. I ask him fucking rapid fire questions and I don't give a fuck what he thinks about it. You know, did you have sobriety before? You know, how long did you have? Did you ever sponsor? All those questions. The prospecting is so important because, you know, for example, with Dale, if I found out, you know, in the prospecting time that you had, you know, multiple years before, I know exactly what to fucking do with you. I make sure you understand you don't know a fucking thing about, you know, right out of the gate, man. I know what it is. I know that that's your identity. I know there'll come a time left unchecked, you're going to try and take me through the fucking book, right? If left unchecked. And I see that right out of the gate and I cut that off at the fucking knees. As soon as I hear or even a sniff to that shit, I cut it right the fuck off. And so, but see, had I not done proper prospecting, I never would have understood that. You see? So I have to do proper prospecting right out of the gate to see right the fuck away. Because all this needs to be cut off at the fucking knees right away. That's the only way it gets rectified. And so not properly prospecting early on, again, not that it was a mistake, just that I didn't know. I was just ignorant. Then all of a sudden I get wicked character defects that are coming out in these guys, you know, on the 12th step. Probably the biggest one is I don't need to sponsor. I hear that. I don't hear that today. But when I did hear that, holy fuck, is that alarming? Is that him? Is that me? Right? And then you start looking at it, you're like, okay. You start to see it in other guys. You're like, okay, it's a character fucking thing. And I got to arrest that right out of the fucking gate. Right? So getting emotionally involved is probably the biggest fucking thing. Not understanding how to properly prospect. I would say that those are the two biggest things. Definitely getting emotionally involved. But now an energy perspective. So like I said, that me and Bill, we don't sponsor a couple of guys. I mean, maybe we did at the start. But, you know, when we talk about kind of building like, what did you say? It wasn't a game plan. It was a system. Building a system with these guys. It's not to sponsor 3 guys at a time. It's really to sponsor 10 guys. Really 10 guys plus at a time and be successful with that. Right? Not so much that it's cookie cutter, because there's still going to be some tailor-made pieces. And the 9 is going to be tailor-made. Very intuitive. The 5, always going to be intuitive. I can't do, you know, there's going to be a couple of principles, whatever. But anyways, in saying that, to do it to scale its energy perspective, okay? So if I got a guy who's 12 stepped, right? And I got another guy who's on step 1, right? And this guy who's on step 1 calls me 3 times. Let's say twice a fucking day. And he blew off, let's say out of 3 sessions, he's blown off 2 sessions. He calls me all the fucking time, doesn't really want to do the work. Maybe the pride's reasserted itself a little bit, right? That guy is going to take a fucking ton of energy. Then all of a sudden I get a guy who's doing the fucking deal and calls me, and I don't answer the call. I answer this other guy's call, and then he sends me a text and says, hey, Jess, just a question on sponsorship. If I go and answer the step 1 guy who's not doing the work before the guy who's actually doing the deal, there's something fucking crooked about that. What I'm talking about is energy. I got to understand that I only have so much energy, and it has to be displaced in the right fucking areas. A guy who's 12 stepped under me doing the fucking deal will always get that call answered before the fucking new guy is not doing a goddamn fucking thing. I'm not going to say it took me a long time to understand that, but I am going to say in understanding that, I did make a good amount of mistakes. And that's more mistakes out of, again, ignorance that I just didn't fucking know. Because it is crooked, right? Like I could have one guy who's not doing the fucking deal. He takes my energy of 5 guys who are doing the fucking deal. Yeah. You know what I mean? And understanding actually when to cut a guy loose. Now, being an early sponsorship, you're not cutting shit loose, bud. You're not cutting shit loose until really as far as I'm concerned, and what I tell my guys is that 8 to 10 mark. Yeah. If you got a family, if you got kids, might even be less than that, depending on what the kids, that might even be 6, right? But that's more tailor-made conversations with your own sponsor, of course. Bill?
I think I'll just add, I really agree with what Jesse said. And, there's a lot of people in the program that do not agree with this. There's a hierarchy in the relationship. There has to be, or it gets crooked. And the hierarchy is teacher, student. Yeah. The teacher has to be the teacher. That's the sponsor. And the student has to be the student. That's the sponsee. Once that gets crooked, then all hell breaks loose and you're not effective anymore. And what happens is you become friends, and usually the friendship happens before the 5th step. And if it happens before the 5th step, you have no power of authority in the sense of telling them anything of what you need them to do to grow out of it in the 6. Yeah. And they just kind of in one ear and out the other, and your effectiveness is lost. By the time you get to the 8 and the 9, they're doing what they want anyway. And so, that took a while to kind of integrate. The other thing is so many guys will be like, well, we'll be friends forever kind of shit. And no, that's not the deal. My only job is to take you through the 12 steps so you can have a spiritual awakening, which is a personality change sufficient to promote recovery in your life. Relationship with God is the deal here. Service is the deal. And looking at your defective character, working your 10, 11, and 12. And if God decides we're going to have a friendship, then God decides. I don't. And I never force friendships. I let them go or grow organically. And a lot of people can't do that, man. And so that's been something that's built and developed within my life in general. And it's been a godsend. It keeps me in 416 to 420. I can accept whatever the fuck it is. And because of that, it's proportional to my serenity.
This is beautiful. And I seriously feel like just from listening to this, like this episode could be called even how to pick a sponsor type stuff, right? Like, cause nobody really talks about that, right? Like I've heard a lot of people talking about like, oh, I really like my sponsor or this, and like whatever, we could get along kind of thing. But it turns out in a way that they do end up having to be a disservice, because now we're not, like an example of this is like for myself, like I've had, I connect with young guys and in not even knowing it, but doing this prospect thing. Cause I was taught like, maybe I'm not the right person for you. My sponsor flat out telling me that, like, if you he said straight up, Kevin said, like, if you relapse, we'll start again and we'll go on. If you relapse a second time, I help you find another sponsor right out the gate. Right. Yeah. Because either you're not willing or I don't have the adequate message for you to identify with. And that's fair right out the gate. Right. But being at a spot too, where, even knowing that I got a good sponsor and knowing that I need somebody what's going to be hard on me, because that's the only way I'm going to get it. I remember like one example of this is like, I tried to get a hold of Kev, tried to get a hold of my sponsor and And he's answered and said, I'm busy. Can I call you back? And I said, yes. And so he calls me back, and I answered the phone. I'm just joking around. Hi, sweetheart. Just being like, we're buddies, right? And he quickly kind of shut that down and said, I'm going to call you again in 20 minutes. And then he called me back and he said, okay, it's boundary time. So I just need you to shut up and just listen to what I'm saying here, right? He said, there's one person in this world who calls me sweetheart, and she was sitting in a car right next to me. And that was awkward and weird. We're not buddies. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to give you an adequate message of the steps and how it can save your life, right? Like, we don't have time to be doing this stuff outside of this. And in my head as the sponsee, I'm going, and yeah, no, we're fucking never going to be friends. Like, this is instantly, I'm like, I'm at it, right? But having that laid out in the early stages, like it affected me, but I'm dying.
Yeah.
And I know that I need it this way. And all of a sudden it's loud and fucking clear of what the fuck we're doing here. Right. And I've had guys, right, and I haven't had to be that forceful, but right away start hearing stuff like, oh, like we should go hiking, we should go biking, we should go do all this fun shit. Cause I'm living life now and loving it and actually partaking in the stream. Right. Like, and the answer, what I'll come up with was like, look, bud, if we got time to be going biking, I think we got time for some step work. Yeah. And, we'll get you through the steps and then we'll talk, kind of thing. Right. And it wasn't as forceful. I needed it to hear it that way. Right. Yeah. And having a sponsor that understands that this is not gaining friends. Right. And he's flat out said, like, I have friends, I have sober friends, and we do sober shit. You know what I mean? And that's not you at this point. Like, and it's not looking like it's going to be if we're starting down that path. Right. So it's a beautiful thing. And, I feel like coming through this, it's like almost a thing that I just feel this urge to like this is not just like, this episode is not just for people what are trying to be sponsored. Like, anybody what's looking for a sponsor could listen up to this too. And in who they're selecting, you know what I'm saying? Like, cause it's important, and it's so easy. Like, I've heard you guys talk to before about, it's so easy. Like, once I get a little bit, I'm in the treatment center, welcome to your free fucking sobriety, shit like that. Right. And it's what it is. Right. It's when I'm on the road on my own, what am I doing? Right. And who do I have in here? And it speaks to the pillars too. And that's something that I push as well, because I don't even try to get a hold of my sponsor for stuff, because a lot of it's just repetitive. Like, I'm fucking asking the same thing the day after going through this step 10 stuff, which is ultimately the way that I had to do it repeatedly, consistent, persistent, commitment to doing this on all of them. It's annoying I'm embarrassed that I got to call them this many times, but I sprinkle it around with a few different pillars, from the source, and all of a sudden I don't feel like such a fucking loser because I'm doing this 99 times a day. Right. And like, looking at it in from where I'm at, it's such a thing that you have to learn how to do this. And I love what Kevin told me the other night, and I have started highlighting to these guys too. Like, I need to talk to I'll say, like, I got to go because I got to talk to my sponsor, implying, sometimes I've started to feel like these guys think I have all the answers for them. Like, I'm up on a pedestal and I'm just this, like, and I've made sure to say, like, I'm not here to give you any answers. I'm here to help you find your own through the material, and if I don't have experience with something, I cannot just act like I fucking know this shit, and that's important. I feel like, because I've had people tell me that before. And like a really close pillar of mine, Liam, like, he said, I'm at a spot where I'm in a hole. And I'll find this when I go to counselors, right? They got fuck all experience with being in that hole. They're standing on the upper lip, having read a book on how to get out of the hole. They don't know what it feels like, right? So if I've not been in a hole with this guy, like, it's my obligation as a sponsor, in the same type of hole, like you were talking about before, Jesse. Like, I gotta know that this is not the guy for me, and it is a disservice to be sponsoring somebody that deals with something that I don't have experience with. Because then it's just my opinion on shit, and I'm in self there, right? Like, it's an ego thing, We talk about our experience, strength, and hope through the literature, and that's the way that this goes. Kevin told me, like, straight up, like, you can't mess this up if you're coming from a place that that 552, like, wanting to. I'm doing what I ought to do because I want to do it, right? He said, if you get a sponsor that's sitting there that's wanting to be there, and you get a sponsee that's there willing to do it, when we sit down together and we open that book, God comes out, you know, and and I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever happens is what's meant to happen, you know, and that's something too to keep in mind, that it's not my responsibility, like you said. And it was, you know, and having people in my life that can, you know, like the three guys that I've met that you've sponsored, Jess, like they have like straight mainline me in a very like profound ways at certain critical times, you know, like being at a step 10 and hating my life because I hate my, you know, like I'm in it, and thinking that you know what, I think I should start. I told Bryce this. I said, I think I should start another set of steps, get another sponsor and start another steps. And he fucking shut me down. He's like, no, that's fucking selfish. Straight up. That's bullshit. He's like, you just want relief. And in the beginning part, you got it right quick because you rapidly went through it. But now we're at step 10 and it's fucking hard. And we're going back now to get that, like, no, that is 1000% the wrong move at this point. So sorry about your fucking, you know, some are sicker than others, right? Like hop to it, Pinocchio, like fuck, we're going, right? And so, you know, as far as the next question, I'm trying to think of something to rattle up, but like when you go through this stuff, do you guys do it differently, catered towards the individual? Like you might have, like I had one specific thing come up where, you know, like when we go through the 5 types of alcoholics, somebody had mentioned to me when I asked, well, which one are you? Because most everybody says number 5, right? And I'm completely normal except when I drink. And I've never had somebody say, and it kind of caught me a bit off guard, right? And he said, well, I'm the manic one, which a whole chapter could be written about. And in my head, I'm like, well, where the fuck is that chapter? Because I don't know shit about this, you know? And kind of being like, okay, and all of a sudden, like, what the fuck, you know? And so I just, in the, you know, like on the fly, just asked him, well, what does that look like? What does that sound like? Like, what does that even mean? Because I don't have experience. And maybe this is just a moment where I need to help you find somebody that's got experience with this, right? But he explained it. And you know, I felt like after hearing what it was more like an OCD type thing that he was talking about. But then when there's nothing to OCD about, then we crash, right? And so we've moved forward from it, right? But even talking to my sponsor about all this stuff and coming back to this idea that I need to have a sponsor, and I flat out asked my sponsor that when I asked him, I said, well, Kev, do you have a sponsor? Like my sponsor needs to have a sponsor, you know, like this is a game of self. I can't have a guy that's doing this on his own wagon all the time and expect that I'm going to get the full thing, right? So when you guys go through, like, I know the answer already. Like you can't, it's impossible to go through this precisely the same for everybody, but do you make like drastic changes? Like you guys have talked about going through, you know, and I've had like even like my sponsor, like he keyed in on a few key points, and I'm assuming he probably did that because he knew I had experience with the book going through the first steps. But do you guys kind of have like a system like you're talking about, and then you got to like sponsor the man, right? Not each individual alcoholic is exactly the same, obviously, but maybe you guys can speak to a bit of that or with some experience, right?
Okay,
So,
I'll take that one first. First of all, in regards to that page that you're talking about in the doctor's opinion, or where it goes through the 5 different types of alcoholics, and I don't even entertain the person to tell me which one they are, because at the bottom it says all these have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. So honestly, it doesn't fucking matter. And because our society is full of labels, ADD, chronic anxiety, and fucking depression, and blah, 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 you get the alcoholic who's labeled and identifies with their label. Now you got a whole nother issue to break the labeling that they've been indoctrinated with. And honestly, dude, I don't even entertain any of that shit. And why? Because we're working with the spirit. The spirit is the solution. And as I go through this material and we turn to God, the identity and the ego attaches to these labels, and I don't even entertain that. So I'm the guy that says, I don't care. I don't care. I do care as I'm vetting you and I have the compassion to listen to you, but going through the work, I don't really care. Because what I've seen, no matter who I've worked with, bipolar, schizophrenic, depressive, anxiety disorder, whatever, A lot of that can be medicated through a relationship with God, and those labels don't mean anything. So maybe down the road, 12 months, 14 months, okay, you do need some outside help. Why don't you look at getting a therapist or talk to your doctor, whatever it might be, and we take that step later. But I've worked with so many people that have actually medicated their issues with the relationship with God, doing the inventory, talking to me or their pillars, and working this shit out. And at the end of the day, it's all back to God, back to God, back to Creator. So I don't entertain that page. I don't even give them the chance to answer that. I say none of that even matters, and I read that last line. We all have the same symptom. We cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving, which Jesse alluded to earlier. That isn't even the fucking big deal. But when you go to rooms, all you hear is people, oh, I put it in my body and I'm off to the races. I'm off to the races. And the allergy is like one of the big topics of discussion. But the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind. Why do I put the first fucking drink in me when thousands of experience have shown me that another drink means a fucking other debacle with all its attendant suffering? You know, to say nothing for that fucking mental and physical suffering. You know, I'm going to lose my wife. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going Jim's story, Fred's story here, right? That's the issue. How do I not put it in my body is the fucking real issue. So kind of back to what you're talking about there. What was your question?
It was just
Question is, are you changing at all
Yeah,
how
dude.
you work with a guy?
As I did the first year or two, it was structured through a not knowing of different types of alcoholics or different type of people. So Jesse talks a lot about the depressive and the egocentric and everything in between. So as you sponsor these people that in those descriptions of the alcoholics, in that doctor's opinion, that's kind of like DSM-5 descriptions of different type of personality disorders in a sense. You're dealing with all of those types anyway. So I've learned how to deal with the depressive. Probably the depressive has taught me like how to be patient and work with compassion. Whereas the egocentric allows me to keep hard and fast lines and then learning about everything in between. And so I sponsor on an individual basis based on intuitive thought, inspiration, and decision. A lot of it is drawn through my relationship with God. And the only way I could do that was through practice and through relinquishing all the bullshit within myself that blocked me, judgments and shit. But a lot of sponsoring actually relinquished judgment, allowed me to see the humanness in the person and that they're really just sick in the spiritual malady. So it allowed me to have compassion and navigate with intuitive thought, inspiration, and direction and clarity from my Creator. So as I've learned how to do that, for me, there's some certain things that are hard and fast lines based in the book, for sure. But my growing and understanding and effectiveness has really allowed me to cater to each individual's journey. The alcoholic is not unique. Like, fuck, I can't emphasize this enough. Everyone thinks they're fucking unique, but the alcoholic and what they deal with for untreated alcoholism, the defective character, they are not unique. Where they're unique is their experience in their life and what's happened in their life. And some of that has to be listened to and accepted and understood. But it doesn't mean that we cater to it either, because we can't cater to it. So the answer to the question is yes, it's an individual journey with each individual. And it was funny because I was working with a guy here recently and he had asked me for help. And then it didn't actually work out with this guy. And it's kind of funny because he was like, had a spiritual superiority and he didn't really like what I was bringing to light, like certain things. Comes to me on a step 4 with a fucking 1 resentment and a couple fears. And the guy has over 20 years sobriety. And I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about? By the end of the first session, there's 15 fears and fucking 20 resentments that we're kind of talking about. And, but anyway, he ended up pulling away from me and not wanting to do the work. And in my belief, it was because he didn't really want to look at the truth, right? And I've known the guy a long time, but he didn't really want to look at this shit because he's built this idea of what he thinks it is. And as we were ripping it apart, it starts revealing itself that no, it's actually more than what you think it is. And you're still actually the problem, even though you want to blame all these other people. Anyway, he said to me, once we kind of put the cap on the relationship, or at least that part of the step work, he said, well, I put a cap on it. We don't need to do any more, and I've dealt with it, and we're okay. I'm not going to keep working with you. He said, part of me just wanted to see how you stepped people. And I know that there's like 4 or 5 ways of stepping people, so I wanted to see which way you did. And I'm sitting there going, the fuck are you talking about? You're 20 years sober telling me there's 4 or 5 ways of stepping people? No, bro. What you don't understand is every individual gets stepped per who they are and what is intuitive to me as the worker helping you. There's not like these hard and fast lines, although there was in the early systems, which allowed me to expand my usefulness in it. And part of the mistakes, I guess I would say, back to your other question, is I tried to keep it like in these boxes of how I thought it should be based in the literature early on. But I realized that I can't actually do that. So I opened up my mind and opened up those boxes and was able to sponsor in a way more effective way per individual today. But ultimately, it goes from really aggressive to really passive, and everything in between. As you've sponsored as many guys as Jesse and I have, you just get to know how to fucking do it. And at the end of the day, we're not actually even doing it. You just know. Like, you just know how to do it.
God's coming out of the book.
Yeah, dude.
Right?
Yeah.
I would say that although there's going to be some exceptions, so this is what's important. When we talk about, cutting your teeth, right? Getting in there, starting to build some system. It's not like the first system that I built, the whole fucking thing was torn out and a new system was built. It's like it was built, there was some structure, and then it was building on that, right? And what's so important, a lot of this is going to be repetition. It fucking has to be, because at the end of the day, like, I can't be so fucking unique, dude, that if I sponsor you, you can't take what I've taught you and go do it to somebody else. So yeah, there's going to be some, it's going to be some tailor-made for, and I'll get into that in a second. There's going to be some tailor-made shit, but for the most part, dude, it has to be somewhat structured, at least in the way of non-fucking negotiable, right? You take a chapter, We Agnostic, there's some non-fucking negotiable things in there that need to be chatted about, or else you're not doing We Agnostic. You know what I mean? There's some conversations in there. Now, the amount of time that conversation takes, that's what I mean by a little bit more tailor-made, right? But there's non-negotiable things in there that are the linchpin of that chapter, that for without that piece, there is no fucking chapter. You know what I mean? And so that's what needs to be replicated in the men. Predominantly, the difference between the situations of how I'll go through the book is the temperament. Like Bill alluded to, you have your aggressive, which I am. I have no problem with aggressive. That's who I am. So even, for example, when we were chatting about, things that I would have done with you and cut you off at the fucking knees, that's the aggressive, essentially, to the aggressive or to the passive aggressive. So you have aggressive, you have passive aggressive, you have passive. Passive aggressive is what most men are. I'd probably say at least 60% of men that I deal with are passive aggressive, where they can show aggression. They can also show some passive attributes. That's most men. It's a little bit more rare to find full aggressive, and extremely rare, at least in my experience, a full passive. Now, Bill's talking about these are the men that he's learned a lot off of. I would agree with that. Still today, dude, I'm not a big fan of sponsoring these men, just because it is, it does take much more work, and it does take much more compassion, and it does take much more patience. Generally, those men are not for me, and they know that.
And it fucks with the hard and fast lines.
Definitely fucks with the hard and fast lines, but they know that. There's fucking no passive guy coming up to me saying, hey, Jess, can you spot? He hears me speak. He might even hear this. That's not the guy who says, yeah, Jess, you're my guy. It's more or not the aggressive, passive aggressive is mostly what I get, right? So there's that. You have the temperament. Depending on your temperament is depending on how I'm going to sponsor you. Like I said, most guys are the passive aggressive, so that's where we go. If he's aggressive, then I get much more aggressive with him, right? In those hard and fast lines. Then you have, is he wet, which is he fucking brand new to the program? Is he a retread, which means he's been in and out for fucking 10 plus years? Or is he dry, which is, maybe 5 years, program's been lax, he hasn't really worked the program ever. He'll tell me he's 12-step. As I start asking him a couple probing questions, I realize he doesn't know a fucking thing. As far as I'm concerned, he's been dry for 5 years. Everything he's done is almost fucking... What this man's done in 5 years is actually going to work against what we're going to fucking tell him. He has... The guy who's new, who's a blank slate, has a better chance than the guy who's dry in this case, right? So those are the things. Temperament and background.
Okay.
Right? And so collecting, but that's all prospecting. Right? I get that information through the prospecting. And then from there, did he relapse? Is he fresh? There's a couple other things. But then other than that, that's what makes the difference. And the only difference is going to be is spending maybe more time in one non-negotiable, less time in another non-negotiable. And then I'm listening to him. There's going to be some intuitive, but for the most part, it's going through the information.
Thank you for tuning in to the UDRcast. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. The viewpoints and the opinions expressed today were solely of the individual sharing them. If you resonated with this episode, please follow us and share this link with anyone that may benefit from it. Please visit us at Billwardlife to see everything that we have going on. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time.